In a vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete, stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight.
Do you hear that? I can't figure out what that noise is. Can you guys hear it?
That's unsettling. Very unsettling.
It's got to be aliens. It's coming from the Starliner Boeing capsule, the unmanned capsule. I think I'm going to stop it. Did anybody figure out what that was, that noise that they were hearing up there? I mean, when you call NASA and say, we heard something over the speakers, and it's not Rick Astley, what is that? Do you think they've ever been rickrolled in the space station? Anyhow, we're at show 27. Glad to have you here. Maybe it's, I don't know, whatever the heck it is. I am Mitchell K.C. Hill, former disc jockey, now just a guy that talks too much. And very good friend Alexander Knight is here, who is working diligently to get us streaming on all platforms at the same time. And maybe by doing that, you're creating this weird sound effect, that unsettling noise. What is that, Alex?
I have no idea what that is, Mitch. I really don't. It sounds like something underwater. Is it? Am I getting warm? Is it something underwater? Like, it just sounds like in something you would hear if you were working in a submarine. Or am I
Alex,
way off base?
I don't know. I mean, NASA, has a few theories about it. I think they said something about the handshaking between the capsule and the ISS. There's something there. To me, it sounds like some type of radar, and it's cyclic in its nature. So it's some kind of interference that could be coming. You ever drive by an airport and you get weird sounds coming out of your speaker? That's me. Of course, I used to listen to my radio station on a filling back when they used to put the amalgam type filters in your. Anyhow, what's going on? What are we doing here today?
That's a good question. But before we start the actual show, let me just thank everybody in the chat, everybody who's here live today. Of course, we broadcast the show every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, the people, we don't really mention a lot of names, but some of the people that have really inspired the production of this show, that have really helped me. I've been on a bit of a journey to up my video production game. First of all, just some of the underlying technology that powers this show. I just want to thank the people over at Boink Software that produce Mimo Live, because we recently got it set up and running, and that's really improved the production and Zoom video and audio quality that we're getting in. Instead of screen scraping like an animal, that is just not the way to go. So I wanted to thank those people, and I wanted to thank the people at Office Hours for really inspiring me to really up my production game over the last few years. And of course, Laura Thompson, who's come on the show before to say hello to us, who's really been helping us out as well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the people that truly deserve it. But Mitch, this is driving me crazy. So that sound, nobody knows for sure what that sound is. Can you play it again? Okay, that's enough.
Hold on. Apparently I have to turn the speaker on and off. It probably turns out there's somebody in the kitchen or the whatever they call it, the what do they call on a ship? The kitchen. It's got a name, whatever the heck it is. Anyhow, somebody in the kitchen with a pan, and they're going something very low tech. I think that would be funny if they found out there some kind of handshaking problem between the ISS and the unmanned Starliner capsule, which, by the way, has come back unmanned and landed accordingly wherever it was supposed to land. I don't know, in Compton, I don't know. It came down somewhere in California, something like that. So it's kind of cool. It's just weird noises, and we love that kind of stuff. A lot of times, the SETI thing is out there listening for repetitive man-made or not so man-made signals out there, and they're picking up all kinds of weird stuff. A lot of times they'll pick up a pulsar because it's spinning very quickly. So it sounds like a spinning top. Anyhow, just weird noises, weird stuff. In the universe, which is very, very large, anything is possible because there are billions and billions of stars ticking and purring away in the cosmos. If you haven't already figured out today, this is going to be an Alex and Mitch show, so we're going to talk about everything that just catches our mind. And I want to add a little 2 cents to the gang at the office hours. I did that for 3 years. I just find I had no time for it. But if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's a great program on tech. It's hosted by a number of people. And lately, on Wednesdays, Audio Wednesdays, our man right here, Alex, is hosting the first hours. So that's a big deal. Not just reading, but hosting. So, office hours is very generous in its praise or not so much praise on technical issues that have to do with podcasting, video, audio, IT, all that infrastructure stuff. I learned a lot from it, and I tightened my chops up as a reader on the show doing it. So it contributed a lot to the outcome of what I do. Apparently, it's doing the same for Alex, which means our show is better for it. So I think 100%. That's a good thing. I'm glad that it contributes to everybody's game, makes us better.
Yeah, 100%. I want to jump right into the meat potatoes of the show. There's a few things on my mind, but I wanted to talk about the broadcast industry because Chorus Entertainment, I mean, if you're involved in radio and broadcast, you know that there's a lot of layoffs going on. And Chorus Entertainment, which is a massive company here, since last year started reducing their workforce because they're in a ton of debt right now. And I just read an article today that as of the end of August, they've now laid off 25%, which is roughly about 800 people from their workforce. So that's a lot. And they own a lot of radio stations across Canada. They're a massive company. So, and I know, Mitch, you had some things on your mind about this in general, the general loss of jobs and the shrinking of the industry. Like, what do you think's happening right now?
I think it's a correction. It's a correction because, as you mentioned, Chorus, that's with a C, I believe, in Canada is doing a big cutback. Well, it's not unusual over here in the US of A that there's about 5 companies that own about 80% of the radio stations over here, and they're all suffering from some downturn of finances because people aren't watching or listening to radio like they used to. So they're cutting shows left and right. I think the big news over here, I forget the name of the company, but it's not one of the big guys at KLOS in Los Angeles, just let Kevin Ryder and Dave Sluggo Roberts, big guys out on the West Coast, they just got let go. And I think what you're going to see is a lot of the high-dollar, high-profile programs are going to lose their stars because they can't afford it. If you're operating at a reduced budget and you've got, I think Steve Stryker told me that radio as income is down 60% of its income from just a few years ago. The things that are going to go first are going to be the high-dollar, high-profile shows. So it's not done. That correction is going to continue until everything is a bland, automated or AI-driven program. It's the stuff that's continuing a trend that both Alex and I both have said is very unfortunate because there is no more personality. Apparently, they can't pay for personality unless you're like me and you're willing to work for peanuts or Patreon or coffee or whatever it is you're getting. To be able to do a program. So it's unfortunate, but it's a tip of the iceberg, I think, for broadcasting as we know it. Maybe a tip of the iceberg for the big conglomerates that went out in the 90s, late 90s, and bought up radio stations left and right. I mean, at that point, the valuation of stations, they were getting 3-4 times revenues for the value of their stations, and a lot of them got sold. So then what happened is that these big companies ended up with hundreds and hundreds of radio stations that were not making that valuation. They can't make their payments to the banks. they go into Chapter 11 and eventually go into bankruptcy. And I don't think any one of the big operations, including Canada, at Chorus maybe, and I'm speculating here, but I think none of them are showing any giant profits at this time. So what I think is going to happen, if you're asking me, is go ahead and ask me just so I say I'm asking questions. So just go say, Alex, so why do you suppose that's happening? What's going to happen? Okay, I'm just being funny here. Anyhow, what's going to happen is that I think it's going to go back to the mom and pop phase. As radio stations start going bankrupt, I'm talking about the big boys first, they're going to start turning their licenses in or selling their stations at a exceptionally low price or reasonable price, whatever it may be. And maybe people that have a passion for the business, like our friend Mark Giuliani, who's been on here before, who owns some stations down in lower Delaware, are going to buy them up at pennies on the dollar, and then find out that a very, very hard localized format is going to win. Not these big homogenized, conglomerated, big station operations that run around the country doing the same thing in San Diego that they do in Frog's Dick, South Dakota. So that's a place, by the way. So I think it's going to shift a little bit back towards that, and maybe radio has its place, but the correction hasn't finished yet. It's still continuing to go. Because there's so many things you can listen to. You can listen to whale songs. You can listen to. There's people that actually want to listen to that. You know what's cool are those number stations. They're still on the air. Remember the Cold War number stations that supposedly the Russians were broadcasting, where you hear these little tones and then somebody comes on and goes 9, 2, 5, 3, 7, 8. Mm-hmm. They're called number stations. Apparently, the rumor is that they were a way to communicate with your sleeping spies or something. I don't know, just weird alien-based stuff. So it's a bad time for radio right now. We've acknowledged that. It's also what makes me one of the angry or the last angry DJs is to see all that great talent that we grew up with starting to fade away, until all that's left is one or two shows left on Sirius XM where they recognize that personality has a place still. And, I'm still available, Sirius, just in case you're listening and you're looking for talent. We'd love to be able to go on there. Alex, what do you think?
I think
is it a reasonable theory?
And this is a recurring theme, and this is going to keep coming back on the show, but I think people are voting with their time. Right, so they're choosing not to listen to the radio, or they're reducing their time they're listening to. That's the reality of it, and I think that's part of why this is happening too. And again, we've talked about this in the past, but I'll say it again: streaming audio services have really killed listening to music on radio because it's so much higher quality. You can curate your own playlists, but even these services now curate. So Apple Music does a pretty good job of this. I mean, it's funny because if you look at what Apple is doing with Apple Music, they actually have a tab in there called radio. And so it's actual human beings curating music. So I think that...
Imagine that. Actual human beings.
And I think curation is important. I think there's something of value to having somebody who is really a good music historian, who can not only curate good playlists, but actually has something interesting to tell me about that album, or maybe that the year that album came out, there was something interesting happening, or something interesting about the creation of that album and what happened in the recording studio. Somebody who's really knowledgeable, and unfortunately, there's not that many people that are super knowledgeable about that stuff. I mean, I think I can count them on one hand of people that I know and that I greatly admire and respect that are good at doing that. So, I think there's just fewer people, fewer talent out there now that do a good job of that.
Well, what's interesting about what you say is that people want to say, and they do say it, but it don't necessarily mean it, is that they like the idea of curating their own format, like creating their own playlist, but that might be fun for some things like driving to the beach songs, or I just lost my girlfriend and I want her back, a la John Cusack. Here's my favorite playlist for you, or mixtape. But other than that, I don't think people really want to do that. I think they say they want to do it, they want to curate it, but they'd rather have somebody else do it, because there are a lot of surprises and interesting juxtapositions of songs that make it interesting. So I applaud Apple or anybody else that does that, where they create a recognizable curated playlist of songs. I want to hear what so-and-so, what would Taylor Swift listen to in her off time? What would be her list? Not just her own song, maybe other stuff. That's interesting. You're kind of curious about what that is. But the mistake with any curation, whether it's being done by Taylor Swift or yourself, is that you don't realize that the methodology of listening to music is generally better when you reduce the songs that you hear, for the most part, the songs that you're familiar with. And what that means is it's okay to play a song you've never heard before once in a while, but the more you do it, the more disinterested you might get, because it's like a rubber band being stretched. And what that means is that you'll put up with maybe a new song to a certain degree, but then maybe another one in a row, you're starting to stretch that rubber band a little too far. And if it's like a little one that's a little outside your ballpark, thanks for exposing me to it, but ow, it's too much. So, real programmers that run radio stations know that they can inject those surprise mixes, the ooh-wow songs that you haven't heard in a million years, maybe for a reason. But at the same time, they stay around the cream that rises to the top. And that's always been a successful formula for radio stations. Back in the day when I was a music director at a major market radio station, we might have only had about 10 or 15 songs that we played over and over and over again, and maybe another 100, 200 oldies. That sounds like a really restrictive playlist. But when you think about, like you were saying earlier, about time that you can delegate to listening to the radio, the average amount of time that people used to listen to radio, maybe still it's the same way, would be 20, 25 minutes at a time, or maybe over the period of a day. So within that small, short window of opportunity, you got to make sure that you reach out and tap them on the head with a song that they really like, and that means a short playlist and lots of repetition, because the repetition doesn't affect those people as much in a 20 or 15-minute window of opportunity as it would if you were listening for hours and hours on end. Then it would start to drive you crazy. So the way radio used to work is they would program for capturing as much of the people they could within those small windows of opportunity. Yeah. Today, all bets are off, because there's so many things competing for your attention, and it's not just radio, but it's everything. And streaming media means that there can be things for people want to hear punk weather. There's probably a market for that. If I just mentioned it, it's now probably a thing. There's so many pieces of that little pie that have been sliced up and diced up to the point where you can listen to anything you want. So it's hard for a broadband, broad-based radio program to work.
Yeah, and I just want to bring in a comment in the chat. I Am Fatness is saying it doesn't work anymore. And I'm just curious, are you saying just radio, just flat out, the concept of terrestrial radio doesn't work anymore? Please let us know. I'm very, very curious, because obviously people still listen to the radio and people still find it valuable. I'm not saying that radio has problems. Obviously, radio has to, I've talked about in the past about how does radio evolve, and I feel like maybe I'm getting more and more pessimistic over time, but I'm not sure it can evolve in the right way. Like, I just know, like, the medium, and I think that's what he's saying here, is that the medium doesn't really work anymore.
Both of you are correct, and John is correct in saying, is it relevant anymore? Radio is still using the methodology they did in the 80s and expecting it to work today in the aughts. It doesn't work that way, folks. And radio people are very stubborn, say, well, it worked for us great in the 80s. It worked for us great in the 90s. Well, it doesn't work like that anymore. You can't have that kind of methodology and that kind of research reading. So to answer both of your questions, because I think you're both saying the same thing, John was saying it and you were saying it, is that radio is still insists on using some of the same things that made them successful in the first place, but no longer relevant in today's world. That's a big problem. And until they break out of that, they're not going to be able to, fix this stall that they're in. And now they're going into a dive and they're going to hit the ground if they don't fix that problem. You gotta evolve. You got to break out of that approach and come up with something new. Because when you really get down to it, radio is just another distribution methodology. It's like streaming or anything else. But it's more convenient because it's being broadcast over the airwaves. It's quick and easy, and you can get to it very fast. But it's no different unless it wakes up and smells the coffee, and it's just not doing that, Alex.
Yeah, and podcasts too. We don't talk a lot about podcasts, but even podcasts, and I hear this from other podcasters, that podcasting is not what it used to be. Obviously, if you compare the two, podcasting is still a baby. It's an infant in comparison to how long radio's been around for, 100 years or so, right? But a lot of podcasters now are talking about how, even for their podcasts, that revenue has gone down with respect to big advertising. These big advertisers don't get enough data. So they don't feel like the ROI is there because they don't know any. Like, the thing is, with the way podcasting works, because it's based off of RSS feeds, we have no idea really about you. We don't know anything about you. We don't know about the demographics. We don't know about the psychographics. We don't know what people like, what they don't like.
Why don't you explain what psychographics are?
Yeah, it's like what
lifestyle.
It's like exactly like what they're feeling, what they're thinking. As demographics obviously being their age, right, and that kind of stuff. But all I know is I know where people roughly, like, I know what country people are downloading our podcast, but I got download numbers. That's all I got. So these big companies like Coca-Cola, I'm just throwing out a massive name, not saying Coca-Cola advertises on podcasts, but let's say a big company like Coca-Cola, they don't want to advertise on podcasts because we don't have the data that they want, right? And so there are inherent privacy problems with giving people all of that data. And a lot of podcasters are resistant to changing the underlying technology of how podcasts were designed because there's the privacy thing, because they don't want to have to collect all this information. That opens up a whole nother can of worms. And I don't know what the solution is.
I think you're heading down the right pike. I think you're examining this in a very logical way. Is that podcasting or any kind of social media was in the beginning was kind of interesting and fun, and it's like social media, people taking pictures of what they're having for lunch or how they do their laundry in their laundry machine or how they plug up a bee's nest in their backyard. It seemed kind of interesting. You're a fly on the wall watching somebody do something, and usually there's a payoff because something crazy happens in the end. It's not really entertaining when you really get down to it. So I think what's happening is there's a correction there, too, that's going on, and that is, okay, I've got so much stuff to watch now, whether it's social media or podcasting or radio. I'm getting tired of that. I want something that's really well thought out. And there are some good podcasts out there where the people spend time and talk about things that are relevant to today's world, or maybe super entertaining. I think Mr. Beast does some crazy stuff that's kind of fun and entertaining to watch. And I'm getting a little tired of Joe Rogan talking about aliens. But other than that, I will watch those shows. But I don't want to see what somebody had for lunch. I could give a damn what, that they got a great Greek salad and it's a wonderful special meal, and here's how I can make it, or some special trick. It's just getting old because people are getting tired of it. And that's why I think you're seeing revenues go down, because the methodologies that they do have to track the popularity of podcasting is getting a little bit better. They can tell how many people are watching. They can tell how long they're watching. If you track the timeline to what's being said, you can tie the conversation to a specific bump in listeners, whether they tune out or tune in. That's something we never had in radio. In radio, we had a quarterly ratings that came in from Arbitron or Nielsen now coming in and saying, well, you had X number of people listening for so many quarter hours during the day. It was a lot more broad-based and probably had a lot more looseness to the specifics in terms of what was being done. But it was the only game in town, and it wasn't so broken up the way it is today. So I can see that. I can see where advertisers are falling out. And there are millions of podcasts out there?
Well,
there's got to be millions of them.
I think it's up there, but they're not all active. There's a lot of dead shows out there that just either those shows have ended, or they just gave up on them. But one thing about podcasts, I'm curious if you listen to these, but have you noticed that true crime podcasts now seem to dominate the entire marketplace? And you know what? And they're great. I listen to them. I mean, I just started listening to the new season of Serial, and I've listened to many in the past. But I'm always curious how these types of podcasts actually make money, because those types of podcasts, whether they're fictional or even non-fictional, they take a lot of work to put. There's so much production involved in these shows, because if it's fiction, then you've got to write a script. You're hiring actors. If it's nonfiction, you're going out into the field. I mean, I can't imagine how much it costs for Serial to do these things. That they're doing this whole thing on Guantanamo Bay, and so they're doing all these interviews, going out there to Guantanamo Bay and interviewing all these high-ranking officials. So I imagine
follow the money.
It
Alex.
probably takes them a year to make that. Right.
But at the same time, it costs a lot less to do reality TV than it does to do a scripted film story, whether it's a sci-fi or a fiction or whatever. So it's that's why I think reality TV has had a bump in the past, the last decade or so, sort of falling off now for one reason, or maybe people are just sick and tired of the Housewives of Beverly Hills Part 3. Or another American Idol or something. Some of those are just kind of wearing a little bit thin. They're not looking. But, shows like Deadliest Catch, where they catch crab out on the Bering Sea, it's like one of the top-rated TV shows. It used to be that wrestling was like the number one rated program. How much did it cost to do that? They just have a ring and they have guys going at it and gals going at it too. So it's a very interesting world that we live in, and I think a lot of people are motivated to watch these programs. Reality, I think, hit a soft spot with people because sometimes our lives tend to get a little bit boring and mundane and repeatable, and we have to sort of find something to escape to be able to be entertained, live in a different world that makes it seem more interesting. Maybe Game of Thrones, was interesting because, wow, wouldn't it be something to be able to live in that world where you got dragons and magicians and weird stuff going on. Science fiction, I love science fiction. A good story being told is interesting and entertaining. But for the most part, I think people are just being overwhelmed with it. And we're seeing, we're talking about the downfall of radio, downfall of a lot of things going on right now. Streaming media like Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and Max, which used to be HBO, they're all feeling the heat too, because people are now realizing, well, I've got, I'm spending all this money to do what? It's like all of a sudden you have to start deciding, well, which you're going to get rid of, because I like, for example, I'm thinking right now I pay like $20 a month for Disney Plus, and the last big show that I was watching was Acolyte, or I think that's what it was, Acolyte. And right now there's nothing on there I'm interested in looking at. I'm not into cartoons, and I've seen all the Disney cartoons I grew up with.
I'm so tired. There's so much bad program. I mean, I haven't seen Acolyte, but I hear it was awful.
It's not that they're bad. It's
they
just
canceled it.
So
they canceled it too.
Spread out all over. And Paramount Plus, they're in trouble. They just got bought by a venture capitalist fund. And this thing about radio stations, which started this conversation out about the guys at KLS in Los Angeles, it's also affecting other programs. I just read that Jimmy Fallon, NBC, has scaled back the production by, it's like 25% they scaled back the production. I don't know how they do that, but Jimmy Fallon is not as popular as he used to be. Didn't have. I gotta a strange world.
I interrupt you for a quick sec, because we're losing the stream, and there's not much I can do about this. Something going on with the ATEM live streaming, the cache is filling up, and we're dropping a lot of frames right now. So it's probably
it's also a good time as a reminder that we're going to do a new thing on our program where at the 30 on the hour, Alex is going to pop in.
So we're probably going to have to. I'm locally recording. We're probably going to have to dump that stream and upload the recorded version because I don't think it's even watchable right now, and the cache is saying it's completely full. So there's probably nothing that's even remotely viewable right now.
So we're not really on the air. All that
well,
great.
I don't know.
We're
probably dropping so many frames that it's unwatchable. People are going to start leaving. So, yeah.
I think people are still on YouTube. I'm looking over at our. If you're on YouTube and
cache is full.
You've got the chat going, let us know you're able to see us, and we're not dropping frames. And by the way, this is the way we keep it real. We discover these problems like anybody else, but we don't make excuses. We just say, hey, we had a problem. And the way we solve it sometimes it's like a reality show. It's wrapped up in another reality show. And then we can fix things. And I'm Mitchell K.C. Hill, and we're not even sure we're on the air. So it's like when the transmitter goes out in the radio tower, I don't know if I'm on the air, so I'm just going to blab about stuff that makes no sense. Or makes a lot of sense, depending on how you like to look at it. You know what I'm doing lately? And while Alex is working on these problems, I'm selling stuff on eBay. I've decided that I've got so much junk that's been accumulating. It could be old radio stuff. I just got rid of an old family heirloom antique Swiss music box. The kind you have to crank up and it would play beautiful music with little silver bells going in it. I got some decent money for that. And the other thing, I was talking to a friend of mine who has a consignment shop. Remember these sweaters from the 80s and 90s? We'll call it the Bill Cosby era. These are made by an Australian company called Coogee, and this happens to be one of them. Just crazy designs, all stitched together. This happens to be a silk one. I think it was worth like $400 in its time. I'm cleaning out my closet. I've got like 10 of those worth some serious money, so you could put a down payment on a car with all that eBay stuff. So I'm going to continue yakking about eBay until, I'm just looking at it's happening again. I Am Fatness John is saying that the cache is filled up. So I may be totally wasting my time. So I may be just talking to myself and Alex. But anyhow, eBay, get rid of stuff that you've had sitting around the house. I'm contemplating moving, and I've got so much stuff accumulated here that if they told me I had to move inside of a week, I would be very hard-pressed to get rid of the stuff. I got, stuff behind me, equipment that I'm not even using anymore that might be worth something to somebody else. So the other thing you got to watch out for with eBay is all the add-on prices. They have these, things that happen where if you promote your product that's being sold, they're going to take 5 to 10% of the profits and apply that to somebody that, I don't know, magically helps get it sold for you. I've got some domain names that I'm getting rid of that I have absolutely no use for anymore. If anybody's interested in them, send me a chat request. I've got Retro Radio is one of the names I've got. I get a lot of requests for that. I got them up on GoDaddy, so check them out. But I'm just talking for the sake of talking. So, Alex, feel free to jump in once you've been able to restart the stream and get rid of the cache problem we have. I don't want to bend my brain any more than I have to talking about broadcast when we know we have an issue that we're dealing with. I point out a couple of things, Alex has got a new microphone that I really want him to talk about. And maybe he will in just a moment when he's got some time. But that's not the same old AKG that you got sitting there in front of you. How we doing? Any luck?
No, the ATEM is screwed up. I don't think our we'll finish the show. But I am locally recording it, but we're gonna have to delete it and re-upload it because it's just unusable right now. I can't fix it.
Now, when you delete it and re-upload, what do we lose?
Well, it'll show up as a new episode. Any comments that were there will be gone.
Oh, but if you recorded it and we broadcast the chat, then it's not lost. It's been recorded and it could be played back on the new version of it, right?
Well, the chat is embedded into the live stream. So when you delete that video, it's gone.
But if we talk about the chat,
oh yeah,
then it's part of the program. So if you're gonna, so let's make sure that we got everybody's chat covered, because if we're going to lose the actual written chat, that could be a problem. Okay, so our friend I Am Fatness has been indicating there's been a problem here all along, and being the technical person that I know that John is, I don't doubt that those things are going on. I don't see some of our regular, and yeah, we just dropped a bunch of streaming listeners, so it must have gotten so bad. So apparently, I am talking to myself or to one or two people.
I'm gonna kill the stream. I'm just gonna kill it because there's no.
Feel free to kill it. Restart it.
No, because that'll create a
restart.
that'll create a new episode. No, we'll keep going, and I'll upload a new version of the show. So just stand by here.
All right, I'm standing by. You know what did it? This thing did it. That weird sound we were hearing. That's what messed it up. That's what messed it up, that weird alien sound that's coming from the International Space Station. This is one of the fun things in broadcasting when you're talent and you're sitting in a room by yourself and all the engineers are in the other room and something's happening and they're all jumping left and right and talking amongst themselves, and you're kind of stuck with the job of trying to keep yourself entertained and sitting there. I don't know what's going on. I'm just, until they point at me and tell to go, I'm not going to go. I'm an automaton.
I just killed the stream. So we'll keep going. I'm recording the podcast locally, and then we'll re-upload a better version of the show that'll have no problems. No problems. Let me just, since
so
we're
we
not
just
live,
dealt with a
wipe the sweat off here.
Wow, you're under pressure. Nice. It's a good look for you. The Shepherd.
I'm just going to do the show like this in the darkness.
Yeah, you look like one of those. You ever notice that people wearing hoodies, they're up to no good? You know, it's like a hoodie is like a signal to everybody around you that
I've worn
I'm hiding
hoodies,
my
not in a
identity.
while,
I'm going to rob this 7-Eleven, you know. I don't know. It's just maybe too much TV. Maybe there's a real reason for hoodies, but not so much anymore.
No, I wear.
And it's not an ethnic thing either. It's just the fact that you're wearing a hoodie. I don't care.
Do you think
what color
42 is too old to be wearing a hoodie?
No, I think older people are doing it all the time. People that work out, boxers, they do it. They wear hoodies. I don't know. Maybe it's the thing. So, what did we talk? We're talking about the condition of the broadcasting industry. It's not just the broadcasting industry. It's media in general.
Absolutely.
Anything that competes for your eyeballs or your earballs, if you will, for attention is at risk right now. Whether you got a streaming service, every month you get that bill. Netflix just upped their price. Paramount Plus, you're not sure if they're going to be around. I think HBO will survive as Max because they just merged with Discovery. It's a brave new world that we live in. And the thing with podcast, it's like going to Netflix and really wondering, you know, there's thousands of shows to watch. I have no idea which one I want to watch. It's like there's nothing on, you know, so you go in there prospecting, you know, going into Netflix and say, is there a new show or something? And, you know, I like science fiction. I end up with either really good science fiction or really bad science fiction. And really, really bad science fiction does it to me. It's like an action show. As soon as I see guns and car chases, I'm done with it because I know there's not going to be anything worthwhile.
Come on,
except
you don't
guns
like
and car chases.
You don't like a good action movie? I mean, I will watch anything with Jason Statham in it. I just love his movies.
Yeah, I like him. I think there's a story to be told. You know, he's consumed some kind of drug that's causing his heart to slow down.
Crank
all the ways
is a
he
great
has to
movie.
restart.
I love Crank.
He's pretty funny, but there's also been some pretty bad Jason Statham movies out there. So, you know, what are you going to do? Have you seen the new Jennifer Lopez science fiction movie. It's horrible.
Oh, I knew that was going to be
waste your
bad when
time with
I
it.
saw the trailer for it on Netflix. I'm like, that's going to be bad. It
It's
looked
like,
bad.
who talked her into doing that?
The effects look so bad. I just was so embarrassed by it.
It's like a really goofy version of so many movies I've seen before, and I can't even mention them because it would make them seem bad too.
You know what's kind of
But
an interesting sci-fi movie? Did you ever see, it's an older movie now. Did you ever see her in The Cell?
Yeah, definitely.
That was
Where she would go into this...
into the serial killer's mind.
Yeah, D'Onofrio was in that. The guy
that's right.
was a little whacked out.
Yeah.
So she'd go into their heads, and then they would control you. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. The Cell was nicely done. You know what it just tells me is that it's not the special effects, it's the story. If it's a good story and it's an intriguing story, the special effects are, they're candy. But what shows I can't stand and are in sci-fi genre? Anything with a time loop in it where they do something over and over again, or go back in time. I'm sick and tired of time-related stories. Please stop doing that. No more. I've seen plenty of them in Star Trek over and over again. Or everybody has to put it in there in somewhere. Or Groundhog Day, playing the same thing over and over and over. Okay, the first time it was kind of interesting.
Right.
The second and third and fourth and fifth, it's like, forget about it.
I do have to say, because I was very skeptical about this, but I just finished the new Terminator Zero anime on Netflix, and I thought it was fantastic. One of the concerns that I always have, and which is why I'm so burnt out on, I'm trying not to watch superhero films. I'm voting with my wallet. I don't want to spend time. I'm trying to watch movies that are not based on existing IP, that have something new to say. And I was really worried about this because obviously the quality of Terminator movies has kind of diminished over the years. And I just thought, if you're going to do some kind of sequel to, or something that's based on the Terminator, it's going to involve time travel, but I want to know that there's something new to be said. And I thought, without giving away any spoilers, I thought that the characters in this show were really good, and I thought it had something very interesting to say about human beings and our relationship to computers and artificial intelligence, because that's very apropos of the current times that we live in, and it had some interesting things to say about the hubris of humanity, and that that we kind of think that we're built in the image of God, and that sometimes we think of ourselves like gods, of like the ultimate, the upper echelon of species kind of a thing. And there's a lot of arrogance in humanity, and it talked about the treacherous nature of humanity, how we're prone to destroy ourselves, and a lot of interesting things in there, I thought.
You're a deep thinker, Alex. I'm impressed that you've said it very eloquently, but not until The Simpsons do a Terminator version, and probably they have. I'm not going to take it seriously. I got to see a Simpsons version because then it would be funny. But you know what? Every once in a while, a good show comes along. I'll give you a tip. If you have Apple TV, and most of us do, Bad Monkey is a great series with Vince Vaughn. It's just
I haven't started that up yet. You like that?
Yeah, it's just fun to get away from stuff, and a lot of the dialogue has got to be ad-lib because Vince Vaughn is very good at doing that, and it's got that that detective kind of thing going on, or anything could go on, and it's not crazy with special effects or anything like that. It's just a fun story. And I liked the I can't even remember it. I mentioned it earlier. The Game of Thrones. I like Game of Thrones. I not so much like the ending. I thought that they kind of got weird at the ending. But the show that replaced it, that's just wrapping up. What was the House of Dragons? Horrible.
I haven't watched that either.
House of Dragons is like, what a waste of time. It's like, come on, do something. Because you tend to, compare it to its predecessor. Well, actually, it's a prequel, so it's not. And the other thing, I'm not sure I'm going to like it just on the basis of the franchise, is the new Aliens movie that's coming out.
I won't watch that. It's out.
Progenitor.
Alien Romulus, which is...
Romulus, that's it.
I'm not watching it.
I like Prometheus. I thought that was pretty good. because you got a little bit of the backstory to what was going on. But the one that came after that, not so much. And Romulus, okay. And there's a TV series coming out, and I think there's an anime. So they're really milking the shit out of that right now, for what it's worth. So that's my complaint about all these specialty channels that are streaming. The corporate overlords, and maybe it's Skynet, that's how it's taken over, all these streaming services, you kind of have to decide maybe one or two, but not three or four. Take your pick. And some of them are going to go out of, I just threw up on my mouth thinking about it. Sorry about that. Hold on a second. I got to take a little swig of water because I'm thinking about streaming media services. I wouldn't do that if we were on a regular show. But anyhow,
I just want to say something quickly because you talked about the House of the Dragon, and I haven't seen that show, but I want to talk about something that is a complaint that I hear from a lot of people now, and I find it a little disturbing as someone who's a bit of a film buff. Every time I hear about someone complaining about something that I think is a good movie or a good show, the complaint that I always hear is that things move too slowly. And so everybody wants to have this, like, we're trying to make this stuff that's rapid pace, that is always trying to grab your attention. And I have a problem with that kind of storytelling. And I feel that modern audiences have lost the ability they don't know how to watch movies anymore. Right. So for example, like something that is just naturally going to have a slower pace. People don't fall asleep through those movies. They don't want to watch them. These movies don't end up making a lot of money at the box office. I have a real problem with that. Even with friends and family that can't sit through a movie without picking up their phone. It's just like, what are we doing here? Right? It's just we've lost the ability to appreciate.
It's the storytelling. It's a storytelling, and I think when you're having a story told, you can only juggle so many balls at the same time. But if they get all these subplots going on mixed in at the same time, it's really hard to hold that in your head, especially when you get older. Like the new Doctor Who. I mean, I love the idea that the Doctor Who is now on Disney Plus, but the pacing and the presentation is exactly what you just said. It's just so fast that I can't keep up with it. And to be honest with you, because of their unadulterated accents, which is natural for them and not so much for us, I can't understand what the hell they're saying. They're saying it's natural for them. And it's like they're blabbing and they're using metaphors and lingo that I just can't attach my brain to. And so I miss about a third of the dialogue that's going along. If they slowed it down just a little bit, I could get along with it. If a story seems to be running slow, the person that's ultimately responsible for that is the director, and they're interpreting a script. And if they decide that the slow speed is adding to the story in some way, then I can understand that. I can put up with that. Like Shawshank Redemption, it kind of has its slow points in it, and then it also has its fast points in it. That's the way life is: slow, fast, slow, whatever. But it's not all slow. It's not all fast. A Michael Bay Terminator movie, or not Terminator, the Transformers. It's just so full of special effects and things going on. It's like the second Independence Day with the alien invasion. They have every tiny little space filled up with things that are going on. You don't have time to absorb any of it. So that's my complaint about the speed of the presentation. But the other thing, keep in mind, I'm an older guy. I like a little bit of a more calm approach, but it all comes down to telling the story. So if the director causes that to happen, that's on the director, and it's also the editor because of the pace of the editing. Some people, they edit for the attitude of that moment. They might have a lot more cuts if there's some action going on, just to create a certain anxiety in the viewer. But other than those little tricks of the trade, I agree with you. It's like either too slow or too fast or too incomprehensible. And when they have these stories that are on so many different levels involving so many characters, I just don't. I'm not trying to. It's like the House of Dragons when you get a chance to watch it. There's too many stories going on at the same time to keep track of it. It's like you need a playbook. You need to be going like, oh yeah, that's that Targaryen has this, and dragons don't like riders that aren't of this particular breed, or there's no special effects to entertain me to speak of. I agree with you, and you know what? That's what life's about today. I think that the problem is that the decision makers aren't the people that have a passion for the business. It's all about the money. It's all about the how many viewers we can have on our Plus streaming event service. It's people that have nothing to do with creativity making decisions about how things are done. And that's affecting radio, it's affecting media, streaming, podcasting, et cetera, et cetera. I think podcasts they just have to grow up. They have to grow up and find out that showing your lunch on social media is not really entertainment after all, especially when you're competing with all these other interesting shows about aliens and anime and stuff like that. Do you not agree? I mean, we're kind of saying the same thing.
I think so. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I mean, all this stuff is evolving. I mean, even streaming platforms too. I mean, they're having their own share of problems, and you talked about that as well. But there's a lot of stuff getting cut from streaming platforms. They have a lot of issues with attrition with people. This is another problem too, is when Netflix started having this model where they give you the entire season of a show all at once, say 10 episodes. You binge watch it all at once and you go, cancel. I'm going to leave. I'll come back. I'll subscribe again when the next season is out. They lose a crap ton of money doing this. This is a problem across the board for all these companies, and they're fighting with the user base, so they're making changes to how they just slowly trickle out content, which I understand because you don't want people canceling the moment they stop. Once they finish the season, the series, right? So it's a problem. And look, podcasts are going through teething pains. Radio is going through teething pains. All this stuff has to change. It all has to evolve. And I think that's what it boils down to. And nobody really knows, I think, what the true answer is or how this stuff is going to pan out. I think podcasts, that's a tough one. And obviously, people are having a lot of challenges trying to make money from that. And the same with radio too. So it's going to be.
We're getting heat from people for doing a video podcast. We're being told that we're not audio purists and that our program should just be audio only, as a podcast must be. But I think there's something to be said. I learned this from office hours, frankly, is that when you do a live show where people can participate, they can't right now because our chat broke. When they have a live component that they can look at, then they have the option of participating in the making of the show and then listening later if they want to and just enjoying the comments and questions that people make or what's being done as an audio thing. The other thing about that kind of a podcast is you can do other stuff. That's what radio is great about doing, is that you could drive the car, mow the lawn, ride your bike, work out in the gym, and still listen to radio. Same thing with a podcast. It's just something to occupy another part of your head. So I think it's going to evolve and it's going to turn into something else. We have some very interesting guests coming on. I think we kind of lowered our bar a little bit today because of the circumstances. Not every show can be as great as the last one. We do the best we can. We do want to show our passion. And unfortunately, we had a little technical snafu that caught us by surprise here. But there's a few gems in what we talked about here. Just to give you a little look into the future, we have some guests coming on that are going to be really interesting in the next month or so. Gary Berkowitz will be coming on with us. Gary is a radio programmer. He's responsible for determining radio formats, usually in the middle of the road, AOR formats, classic hits kind of thing. He's going to come on. We're going to talk to him. I've known Gary for a number of years. And he used to listen to me when I was on WFIL, so what's not to like? Another guest we're going to have on is one of the fathers of audio processing, Frank Foti. If you know anything about that name, you'll know that he's closely associated with the Omnia processor, which is one of the premier audio processing devices that's used in broadcasting. He's also the chairman of the board, I think, over at the Telos Alliance. where they make everything from audio processors to mixers to this and that and ratings, watermarking system. I mean, they got a shit ton of stuff that they do. So those are going to be interesting people. I want to embarrass him right now because I want him to come on next week's show. He hasn't committed yet. Steve Stryker was on like our first or second show. Steve's just an all-around nice guy, knows everything about broadcasting and a little bit about everything else in the world. He's an attorney. He's an interesting person to talk to. Steve, I'm challenging you right now to set aside next Sunday as a date you're going to come on our program. So those are some of the things that we'd like to do as they're coming up, because we're kind of telling you that we can continue to develop and enhance this program in as many different ways as we can. And we're also open to suggestions. So if we're open to suggestions, we're open to your questions and your comments. Please help. Click that subscribe button, hit that like button, follow us on Facebook. All of those things help make us a better program if we can. And Alex usually steps in at this point to tell us how do they reach out and touch us if they want to.
Yeah, so if you like what you're hearing and what you're seeing, please do support the show. You can do that by going to patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ and become a coffee supporter. Give a couple of bucks a month. That would greatly help us as well. And of course, just tell a friend. If you like the show, just tell a friend. That is the best way to spread the word. And we'd love to have any new listeners as well. You can reach out to us for comments and feedback by joining our Discord community. You'll see a QR code over my shoulder here. And if you're not part of the community, we very much welcome you as well. And of course, you can also email us by going to thelastangryDJ.com/contact and drop a message in the contact form.
Yeah, and we're not acting like we're going away or that we need money. We're not asking for those things yet. We're just asking for your support. And what that means is just to reach out and say, hey, we like what you guys are doing. We like what you're talking about. You're headed in a good direction. Or you're not, in which case I'd rather see you do more of this, more of that, or less complaining about the number of subscribers. We know we build an audience. It takes a very long time to do that. But the fact that you're liking what we do and we have regulars that come on the show, that just does our heart good. We appreciate that because we have a passion for what we're doing. And we like to think that we're exploring new ways to make different types of media, whether it's podcasting or radio broadcasting, better than what it is, because radio has to get out of its slump. It is in a total slump, but one of the main reasons it's still doing the same thing it did in the 80s. Come on, wake up. Let's shake things up a little bit and let other things happen. And if it means that it's got to go bankrupt before it gets better, then that's what's going to happen. And maybe we don't have any choice for that. But that pretty much wraps up an interesting show. I'm going to be interested to see how you're able to stitch together the two recordings we did and make them seem fairly flawless in what you did, Alex.
There's no stitching required. The ISO recording also has the program. Everything recorded locally. There's no glitches with the local recording.
Okay, so you have that as a backup.
I have that as a backup, and I'm going to upload that version.
That's cool. Well, that's what'll happen. It'll show up. This just won't have an actual chat record because the second half of our show that we did here doesn't have an attached real-time chat, which you would normally see. So don't worry about that. We'll fix that for next week. So that about wraps up another great show for The Last Angry DJ. I want to thank my co-host and tech and producer specialist, Alexander Knight, for doing what he does. By the way, you can support Alexander. He's going to be the host of the Audio Wednesday program on Office Hours. You want to know more about that? officehours.global. We want to thank again our benefactors from that, the folks at Mimo Live, Oliver Breitenbach, who's the mastermind behind that. Very generous with the time. Thank you, Oliver. And to Laura Thompson over at the Office Hours crew for helping us make this Zoom possible. So thank you to everybody, and we hope you all manage to make it through to next week. We'll see you at the same time, same bat channel. Take care.